BBC iPlayer. Love what you find. Find what you love. Binge watch brilliant shows. From the latest to the greatest.
Welcome to a place that is astonishing.
Watch live BBC TV.
City and Haaland let their hair down. Not something we see in here very often.
Find your next big obsession.
If my life was a movie, it'd be a classic.
Just press red for the best way to watch TV on BBC iPlayer.
I ended up becoming heir to the throne aged 4.
With never-before-seen footage. The King's life in his own words.
It is important to be honest and genuine, and people will always see through you if you're not.
Charles R., The Making of a Monarch. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
This is BBC One Scotland. Now the BBC News at 1 with Ben Brown and Reporting Scotland with Graham Stewart.
Today at 1, gains for Labour and the Liberal Democrats in England's council elections and significant losses for the Conservatives. Early results show the Tories have lost control of 12 councils so far, including Plymouth, Stoke-on-Trent and Medway. Labour call the results fantastic and say they mean the party can win the next general election.
Make no mistake, this means that we are on course for a Labour majority at the next election.
It's a great night for the Democrats, and I think people now want a general election. They want this government out.
In terms of the results, it's still early. We've just had a quarter of the results in. But what I am going to carry on doing is delivering on the people's priorities.
Well, counting continues, but we'll be analysing what the results so far tell us about the state of the parties. Also this lunchtime, a second mass shooting in Serbia in a week. 8 people are dead and a man has been arrested. The British newspaper reporter who says she was tracked by TikTok, the Chinese-owned social network, to identify her sources.
It's the stage for all Britain's coronations since 1066. I'm here at Westminster Abbey in the run-up to tomorrow's ceremony. The King and Queen Consort were here at the Abbey earlier today for their final rehearsal as crowds gather along the procession route in central London.
I hope I'll be able to see them step out on the balcony. That would be amazing.
The atmosphere in here, you can really feel it. So from different countries, you manage to have friends because you have the same intention to see the royals. And that's what we're here for.
On Reporting Scotland at 1:30, officers take legal action as Police Scotland introduces a clean-shaven policy. And a warning a lack of support workers could strip young blind people of their independence.
Hello, good afternoon. Early results from England's local elections have seen gains for Labour and the Liberal Democrats at the expense of the Conservatives. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, admits the results are disappointing for the Tories. Well, Labour have taken control of councils like Plymouth, Stoke-on-Trent and Medway, and say the results mean they can win a majority at the next general election. The Liberal Democrats have won in Windsor and Maidenhead. Their leader, Sir Ed Davey, has called the results groundbreaking. Here's our political correspondent, Ian Watson, with the latest.
Friends, it's great to have Keir on the pier.
The Labour leader claimed it was the Conservatives who were all at sea. 20 years of Tory rule ended in Medway overnight. Labour had lost all 3 of its MPs in this part of North Kent back in 2010, but Sir Keir claimed his party was now on course for a comeback.
Make no mistake, we are on course for a Labour majority at the next general election. And this was all about the cost of living, and we had a positive case to make.
He says he's changed Labour, and its electoral rebirth is based not just on the number of seats won, but the geographical spread. Labour took control of Plymouth in the south. It regained its traditional territory of Stoke in the West Midlands, and Middlesbrough in North East England now has a Labour mayor.
Right, we're going down here.
And this is a nightmare for the Conservatives. The Lib Dems doing well in areas Labour can't reach. With the general election drawing closer, their crowning glory was taking Windsor and Maidenhead from the Tories.
3, 2, 1! We knew we were going to do quite well, but I'll be frank with you, we didn't realise we'd do quite as well as we have done, actually gained the council here in the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead. The Liberal Democrats have shown that we can now beat the Conservatives, and we're actually coming back in our traditional heartlands too.
The Greens too have made some unexpected gains. So far in East Hertfordshire they've won 16 seats, while the Conservatives have plummeted by 25. The Greens hope to take Mid-Suffolk Council, and the defeated Conservative leader there puts the blame on some in her own party.
Our big claim to fame for Conservatives is always our ability to manage the economy, and that's always been one of our USPs. And unfortunately, because of what happened before Christmas, we've lost that reputation.
Amid a cost of living crisis, Conservative staffers were probably grateful for this food delivery. Rishi Sunak promised to deliver policy promises too.
I'm not detecting any massive groundswell of movement towards the Labour Party or excitement for their agenda. What people want us to do is focus on their priorities. Halving inflation, growing the economy, reducing debt, cutting waiting lists and stopping the boats. Those are the country's priorities, those are this government's priorities, and that's what we're going to deliver.
Even before the final results have been declared, the parties have been indulging in their own version of a post-match analysis. The Conservatives have been pointing out areas where their opponents have been doing less well, while Labour has been arguing it now has enough political momentum to take it to a general election victory. But in truth, it's difficult to be that definitive.
Yes, Labour have made significant seat gains as compared with what was a poor performance by them in 2019, as well as the poor performance by the Conservatives. But if you actually compare the results with last year, Labour's share of the vote, their own share of the vote, is actually on the sample of results we've got so far, and it is only a sample, is pretty much unchanged.
These were the first elections in England to require voters to show photo ID. The elections watchdog, the Electoral Commission, said some who were entitled to vote had been turned away. But Rishi Sunak was keen to turn attention towards global rather than local politics, meeting world leaders ahead of the coronation. His critics say, though, that today's results are more than a little local difficulty. Ian Watson, BBC News.
Well, as we were just hearing there, one of the biggest wins for Labour last night was Plymouth, where the local Tory MP has admitted the result was terrible. The Conservative Council's decision to cut down dozens of trees in the city centre is said to have contributed to the collapse of support for the Tories, as Jenny Kumar reports for us now from Plymouth.
Conservative leadership of the council suffered the same fate as these trees in Plymouth city centre. Toppled during the night in the name of regeneration. A legal injunction gained by campaigners stopped the chop.
If you cut any more trees down, it will be a criminal offence. Yeah.
But this all happened just a few weeks before the local vote.
Labour Party candidate, 1,700.
Some feel this helped Labour have a good night, taking control from the minority Conservative administration.
People are fed up of the Conservatives, whether it's having to choose the difference between feeding the meter and feeding their children. This Tory government has let people down.
The city's Conservative MP said the tree saga had been a contributing factor in his party's defeat locally.
The way the Conservative Council did it, particularly at night, I obviously would have done it differently. I think 4 Conservative leaders in 2 years in the local council group hasn't helped. I think that's a big lesson from tonight, is that people don't vote for divided parties.
This city regularly swings between Conservative and Labour in local elections, but in recent years the Conservatives here have been in a mess, much like the city centre. Since 2020, the local Conservative group has had 4 different leaders and a series of suspensions and resignations from their councillors.
Very hard, isn't it?
Caroline Sardu has a shop overlooking the felled trees and tells me there were several issues behind her decision to vote Labour this time.
We've got other issues like Devon Hospital and lots of things within Plymouth that maybe haven't been dealt with correctly. So maybe having new blood in might be good for us.
Retired couple Sylvia and Colin tell me they would normally vote, but this time they decided not to.
I've lived here, 50 years, and I've never known it so grubby. It all seems to be going to pot, you know?
They just don't seem to care here. So that's the reason I didn't vote.
Bookstore owner Chris Robinson didn't want to say how he voted, but feels the tree situation didn't help the Tories.
I just feel that they've been almost as shambolic with their leadership as the National Party has been, and they've brought no credit upon themselves, either trying to defend what was happening in Armada Way, justify it, or explain how much better it will be in the future.
The clear-up of the trunks has been delayed because of concerns over nesting birds. As a new Labour administration takes root, the pressure will be on for it to deliver on its promises. Jenny Kumar, BBC News, Plymouth.
Well, let's go live to Westminster now, get the very latest from our chief political correspondent, Nick Eardley. Nick, assess for us how bad a night this was for the Tories and how much we can read into these results in terms of the next general election.
There are always caveats, aren't there, Ben? There are still a lot of results to come this afternoon, and people don't always vote the same way in general elections that they vote in local elections. But local elections, like the ones yesterday, are important for setting the political mood here, for giving the big political parties a sense of momentum if they do well. And there are some headlines which are emerging over the course of the day. One is that the Conservatives have taken an absolute thumping. They've lost hundreds of seats. They may well lose over their worst case scenario prediction of losing 1,000 seats in England. And that is something that will worry Tory MPs who had hoped that Rishi Sunak was starting to steady the ship. If it's as bad as it looks it could be, some of them will start asking questions about the party's direction again. The second big question is, what does this all mean for Labour? Can we now say that the party is firmly on track for power at a general election? They seem to think so. You heard Keir Starmer a few minutes ago in Ian's piece there, jubilant. He's absolutely convinced that Labour could form a majority government based on what we've seen in the past few hours. But, and there's always a but here, there is a question this afternoon about how much of Labour's gains is actually about the Conservative vote collapsing, because it doesn't seem that their vote has gone up considerably from last year. So there's a lot to mull over still over the next few hours, Ben. There are a lot of results still to come in, but in Downing Street there will be concern at these results. In Labour HQ, they're delighted.
Nick, thank you very much indeed. Nick Eardley there, our chief political correspondent, and we'll be talking to Nick again at the end of the programme. And just to say, you can find all the local election results online, find out who won in your area. If there was a vote there, you can use our postcode checker, which is available on the BBC News website and on our app. The day's other news now, and at least 8 people have been killed in Serbia's second mass shooting this week. The gunman opened fire from a moving vehicle about 40 miles south of Belgrade. Police have arrested the suspected attacker. The country's president has promised gun control measures that would include removing thousands of weapons from the population. Our correspondent Bethany Bell has sent us this report from the scene, which some viewers may find disturbing.
A forensic team combs the ground for clues after a gunman went on a deadly shooting spree. Locals say an argument broke out last night. They say the suspect went home, collected a gun and opened fire, killing and wounding people in neighbouring villages. Many of the casualties were young, in their teens and early 20s. Police launched a huge manhunt, which went on all night. They arrested a man believed to be around 21 years old early this morning.
You can still see blood on the ground outside the small village school in Dubona. There are discarded bandages as well. This was one of the sites where the gunman struck. People here are in shock.
This man, Stefan, says he's very surprised, as he wouldn't have believed the suspect was capable of such violence. He said he'd always say hi and talk to people normally. The violence comes 2 days after a 13-year-old boy shot dead 8 fellow pupils and a security guard at his school in Belgrade. Serbia's president has proposed tough new gun control measures. He said the shootings were an attack against the whole country. Bethany Bell, BBC News, Dubona.
A 33-year-old man has been charged with murder after a woman was stabbed to death in South London. Mohammed Noor is accused of killing Johanita Kosiwa Dogby as she walked home on Monday afternoon. The family have said she was a smart, dedicated and loving woman who hadn't one bad bone in her body. A British journalist says her TikTok account has been tracked and accessed by staff at the Chinese-owned social network. Christina Criddle from the Financial Times newspaper had been working on a story about the culture inside TikTok's UK operation when staff used her data to try to identify her sources. She says it was chilling. TikTok's parent company say the staff responsible have now been fired. Our technology editor Zoe Kleiman has this report.
Buffy Bell? Good girl.
On TikTok, Buffy was a bigger star than her owner, Financial Times tech journalist Christina Criddle.
I just wanted to test out the features of TikTok because I write about it, but I didn't really want to make videos of myself, so I used my cat, Buffy, and tried to make really fun cat videos of her, and some of them did quite well.
Last summer, Christina was working on some stories about what working at TikTok was like after a manager at the company had to step down when he told staff he didn't believe in maternity leave.
So 2 days before Christmas, I got a call from the TikTok press officer, and she called me up and she said, as a courtesy, I think you should look at the New York Times. So I went onto the New York Times and I saw the story, and that's how I found out what had happened to me, that I'd been tracked. It was just shocking. I was kind of scrolling through it quickly to see what kind of personal information they'd accessed, who was behind it all. I know that they used my location data to try and identify my sources. So if my location was being monitored 24/7, that's not just limited to my actions at work, which it wouldn't be okay even if it was, but this was in my personal life as well. It was, when I was out with my friends, when I was going on holiday, all of that stuff's in there. It was kind of shocking to me that 2 random employees in China, 2 random employees in the US managed to find a TikTok account that wasn't in my name of my cat to try and use that for something that was to do with my job.
The UK's Data Protection Act has strict rules about what companies can do with personal data.
I did not consent for my data to be used in this way, and we do have very strict protections for that in the UK and in Europe, and TikTok has admitted this was inappropriate access to data.
TikTok's owner ByteDance said it deeply regretted the incident, describing it as a significant violation of its own code of conduct. It said the employees who did it had misused their authority and no longer worked at the company. Do you still use TikTok?
I have to use it for work. I used to really enjoy using it for fun. Like, I was on it for hours. I loved the videos. I learnt some fun cooking recipes and things like that. But now I just have a dummy phone that I use it for at work, and I don't use it else.
Zoe Kleiman, BBC News.
The streets of the Italian city of Naples have been flooded with street parties after their football team Napoli won their first Serie A title for 33 years. The last time Napoli were champions was back in 1990 when they were captained by Diego Maradona. This time round they've secured the title with 5 matches still left to play. And the time is just 18 minutes past 1. Our top story this lunchtime: the Conservatives suffer significant council losses in early local election results in England. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has described them as disappointing. And coming up, how some communities are preparing to mark tomorrow's coronation.
On Reporting Scotland, in around 15 minutes, officers take legal action as Police Scotland introduces a clean-shaven policy. And camping for the coronation, we spend the night with people hoping to get a good view of the King.
Well, on the eve of the coronation, the King and the Queen Consort have been at Westminster Abbey this morning for a final rehearsal. World leaders and foreign dignitaries, meanwhile, are converging on London for the big day, with representatives of more than 200 countries and territories due to attend tomorrow's service at the Abbey. Let's go there right now, live, and join my colleague Jane Hill. Jane.
Ben, thank you so much, and a warm welcome to Westminster Abbey, which has played host to all Britain's coronations since 1066. And tomorrow, people in this country and around the Commonwealth will have their eyes focused on the Abbey here as King Charles III is crowned alongside Queen Camilla. As you will know, I'm sure, if you've been watching our coverage in the last few days, there's a good few people who are already camping out along the procession route, braving the rain. My goodness, there has been some rain to brave this morning. Absolutely torrential downpours here in central London, but it's not putting people off, and there are parties planned across the country, of course. We'll have more on all of that in a moment, but our first report this lunchtime is from our royal correspondent Sarah Campbell, who's been taking a look at those final preparations for tomorrow's formalities.
Arriving for final rehearsals at Westminster Abbey, the King and Queen Consort. Their coronation ceremony gets underway at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Much is as it always has been, but elements have been changed and updated. Instead of the peers paying homage to the King as is tradition, Lambeth Palace revealed last week the public would be invited to pay homage. According to the King's friend, the broadcaster Jonathan Dimbleby, it is not an idea the King would support.
I can think of nothing that he would find more abhorrent. He's never wanted to be revered. He's never wanted, so far as I know, to have anyone pay homage to him except in mock terms as a joke. He wants, I think, to feel that people will share in the event. And I don't quite know how this might have happened.
According to the palace, Mr Dimbleby was speaking in his own right, and they have nothing else to add. Among the 2,300 guests in the Abbey tomorrow will be Sir Simon Bowes-Lyon, a cousin of the late Queen, who also had a front row seat in 1953.
That was the moment when the big historical moment was just happening in front of one's eyes. At that moment, the Queen was recognised as being the Queen. When you actually saw the crown being put on her head, that had a sort of finality about it.
The finishing touches continue to be made to the Abbey, with more than 100 different varieties of flowers from every corner of the UK now ready to be arranged.
My wife and I wish you and your families a wonderful coronation weekend.
And passengers on trains and the London Underground will get to hear a special announcement recorded by the King and Queen Consort.
And remember, please mind the gap.
What no one can control is the weather. The sun's shining now, but 5 minutes ago it was torrential rain, and tomorrow is looking decidedly variable. While that may not dampen spirits, it might mean that the coronation flypast might have to be delayed or even cancelled.
On the ground, the preparations continue for what will be the biggest military ceremonial event seen in this country for decades. Sarah Campbell, BBC News.
Well, we're going to hear a little bit more now about all those people who, I hope, have Macs and brollies and plenty of wet weather gear, because royal watchers, the keen amongst them, have been out camping for some days to try to get the best spot on the procession. Let's head over to the Mall and join our correspondent Ashley John-Baptiste, because I know you've been spending a lot of time there, Ashley. What are people saying to you? Who have you been meeting?
Hiya, Jane. Yeah, it really is hard to put into words the sense of excitement and anticipation among the royal fans camped here outside Buckingham Palace on the Mall. For days, people have been pitching tents, and the atmosphere is exciting. It is heaving. Still, people continue to pitch tents. Now, I should say that there have been some showers, but that hasn't dampened the mood here at all. You have people here from all walks of life, all generations, and I've been speaking to some.
Among the tents, decorations and sea of people, a family of royal supporters spanning 3 generations.
I don't think too many people will have been to 2 coronations. I was here 70 years ago for the Queen's coronation.
It's just an amazing experience, really, being here with Grandma, who was obviously here for the coronation many years ago, and it's just amazing to be here alongside family to experience such a historical event.
I just wanted to be here for this coronation, where it's once in a lifetime, I think.
And it's not just families here, new friendships are being formed.
So you guys have just met, is that right?
Yeah, well, she came up last night with her tin, and you can't help but just make friends, you know. It's a really cool social time to be together, to meet different people, so it's fun.
Absolutely, and again, as I've said, the atmosphere in here, you can really feel it. So from different countries, you manage to have friends because you have the same intention to see the royals.
USA, represent!
For this American camper, she'll be staying put whatever the weather.
I won't even notice it, to tell you the truth. When the procession's happening, it could be a torrential rain and I won't notice it because I'll be too focused on what's going on.
The coronation is a once-in-a-generation moment, and as crowds continue to grow, so does the excitement. Ashley John-Baptiste, BBC News.
Well, it's not just here in the capital, of course, that people are looking forward to the weekend. The next few days sees street parties, special services and events to mark the historic occasion across the country. Our Midlands correspondent, Navtej Johal, has been meeting people in Leicestershire who are preparing for a weekend of festivities.
Rehearsing for a royal occasion. At the Sri Jalaram Hindu Temple in Leicester, they're adding the final touches ahead of a multi-faith service taking place in the city tomorrow for the coronation. Meanwhile, volunteers are preparing food parcels which will be distributed to all of the attendees.
And we just want to sing for the King tomorrow, play instruments for the King, so it'll be lovely. It's going to be a lovely get-together with all faith communities.
Tell me about preparing for a coronation event, potentially in the rain tomorrow.
I think we'll have our umbrellas, we'll have our anoraks, we'll have our raincoats, but we're still going out tomorrow. There's nothing stopping us.
Catherine and her neighbours are also busy in the kitchen in Ravenstone in Leicestershire.
MasterChef BBC coming up.
They're planning a street party for Sunday.
Having barbecue, children's games. We're obviously baking lots and lots of cakes, so there'll be lots of cakes here. Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. I think we've probably got about 100 people coming.
What are you looking forward to most at the weekend?
Getting everybody together, having a good time and finishing off with a gin and tonic.
How are you folding your shirt?
Tomorrow their eyes will be fixed on events in London, and that's where Georgia and Harry will be. They're travelling from Rothley in Leicestershire to the capital to take part in the official coronation events as representatives of the county's Scouts.
So we were just at IKEA having the meatballs, having lunch, and then we got the call from the Scout leader saying that I've been chosen, and I was so excited.
Very, very excited. I'm really excited to see all the people gathered for the coronation, and a little bit nervous as well, but yeah, very excited.
It's an excitement being felt by many across the country who will be marking the historic occasion. Navtej Johal, BBC News.
Well, in terms of the ceremony itself, the UK is the only European country that still uses regalia at a monarch's coronation. The crown, orb and sceptres are symbols of royalty, but what do those ancient objects signify?
The King's orb and sceptres were made for the last King Charles II in 1661. They've been used in coronations since then. The orb is a hollow gold globe mounted with jewels and topped with a cross, symbolising the Christian world. The sceptre with cross represents power and justice. The Star of Africa on top is cut from the largest diamond in the world. The King will also be presented with the sceptre with dove, also called the Rod of Equity and Mercy. It represents the monarch's spiritual role. St Edward's chair was made in 1300 by order of Edward I to enclose the Stone of Destiny, a symbol of the Scottish monarchy. It'll sit on the mosaic floor in front of the high altar. St Edward's crown is only used at a coronation. We're familiar with a representation of it on postboxes or on the cover of a passport. It's solid gold, set with 444 jewels, including rubies, sapphires and garnets.
Well, tomorrow's ceremonies here at the Abbey are, of course, very much about tradition, about pomp and ceremony. That is the nature of a coronation. But we do know that King Charles wants to put his own stamp on the weekend's festivities as much as he is able. And I think it's really just worth mentioning, highlighting that little nugget that Sarah mentioned in her piece, the fact that the King and the Queen Consort have recorded those public announcements here on the London Underground. And I can't really overstate how absolutely surreal it is to be in the tube, a pretty mundane activity for anyone who knows, lives, works in the capital, and to be on a tube escalator and to hear the King telling you to mind the gap. And I watched people's reactions on the escalator, and people were really chuckling and laughing and discussing it with each other as they realised that the King and the Queen Consort had recorded those public service announcements. Just a little hint of individuality to mark the weekend's festivities. We'll have more from here at the Abbey in the 6 o'clock news. And of course, the big day tomorrow, coverage of the coronation will be broadcast, as you would expect, here on BBC One, BBC Two, and you can watch it on the iPlayer. It all begins at 7:30 tomorrow morning. Also, if you want to keep an eye on just what coronation events are planned, what is due to unfold, we have a complete guide to the day on bbc.co.uk/news and on the BBC News app. For now, from here at Westminster Abbey, I'll hand you back to Ben in the studio for more on the elections. Ben.
Yeah, Jane, thank you very much indeed. In fact, let's get a quick check on what the weather's going to be like for the coronation and for the whole weekend. In fact, Chris Fawkes is here with me now.
Thanks a lot, Ben. And I'll have all of those coronation details for the weather in just a moment. But before we get there, today it's a day of threatening skies, showers and thunderstorms really widespread, as you can see on the radar picture. Now, so far today, the majority of the thunderstorms we've seen have been across parts of East Anglia, but we'll see more getting going across Wales and the southwest over the next few hours. There's all the shower cloud on the satellite picture, but as we zoom to our southwest, it's this area of cloud with a tangle of weather fronts that are going to merge together to threaten outbreaks of rain for the coronation, as we'll see in just a moment. For today then, it's a day of showers, those showers widespread. As I say, I think there's going to be another batch of thunderstorms working into southwest England and Wales before spreading to the Midlands and central southern England later on this afternoon. Quite a few showers for Northern Ireland, something a bit brighter and drier for the northwest of Scotland. Temperatures 16 to 18 degrees for most, and when we get the May sunshine coming out, it won't feel too bad, but still cool for the northeast of Scotland, where it stays cloudy and damp. Overnight tonight, the showers will very gradually fade away, and then later in the night we're going to start to see the next batch of rain working into the far southwest. It's quite a mild night, and temperature will be up at 11 or 12 degrees in the south as we start the day on Saturday. But it's these weather fronts moving in from the south that threaten outbreaks of rain. Now in London, I suspect quite a bit of the rain is going to tend to be quite light and drizzly in nature. There could be a few heavier bursts, but nevertheless, certainly take the umbrella and the wet weather gear if you are heading into the capital. The heaviest showers will be further westwards across Wales and southwest England, and this heavier rain is then going to drive across the Midlands into northern England later in the day. To the north of this, for Scotland and for Northern Ireland, it's a day of sunny spells and showers. Some of those showers heavy and thundery. Still cool for the northeast of Scotland, where it keeps a lot of cloud and the onshore winds, but otherwise temperatures for most between around 15 and 18 degrees Celsius. For the second half of the weekend, it's another day where we'll see showers pop up. Most of them will be across Scotland and eastern areas of England. Later in the day, might start to see some rain approach Northern Ireland as we head in towards the late afternoon or early evening time. Temperatures coming up a little bit. Highs could reach the low 20s in the best of any brighter weather. Then for Monday, showers are going to become increasingly widespread and increasingly heavy, with a greater chance of seeing some thunderstorms as well. So, to sum up, we've got the threat of some rain on Saturday, and then really through Sunday and Monday, showers get more widespread and they'll get heavier with some thunderstorms expected as we head into Monday. That's the latest. Ben.
Chris, thank you very much indeed. And a reminder of our top story this lunchtime. The Conservatives have suffered significant council losses in early results from the local elections in England. At the last count, they've lost control of 14 councils. That is all from the BBC News at 1, so it's goodbye from me and on BBC One now. We'll join the BBC's news teams where you are. Do have a very good afternoon.
The headlines in Reporting Scotland this Friday lunchtime. Officers may take legal action as Police Scotland plans to introduce a clean-shaven policy for frontline staff. And camping for the coronation. We spend the night with people hoping to get a good view of the King. Hello, good afternoon. Police Scotland is planning to introduce a new clean-shaven policy for frontline officers, according to correspondence seen by the BBC. It means hundreds of officers will have to shave off their beards and moustaches by the end of the month. 4 are understood to be taking legal action in relation to the policy. Well, Katie Hunter has more on this story. Katie, why is this policy being introduced?
Well, Police Scotland has told frontline staff and officers that they'll need to be clean-shaven so that they can wear specially fitted masks like this one.